Welcome back to our State Senate Forum with District 3 candidates Randy Sparacino and Senator Jeff Golden. I believe we're going to you for this one, Randy. Homelessness. What steps can you take in the legislature to get cities like Medford or Ashland additional funding for housing and mental health needs in relation to the homeless?
Well, to me, I believe that the city of Medford has done a really good job of addressing the homeless issue in a balanced approach of enforcement as well as outreach. We just recently opened up our navigation center. We have an urban campground, and we also have tiny homes that provide the sheltering. But that's only one facet of addressing the homeless issue. I think the other facets that we really need to address is the root causes. And some of the root causes outside of affordability for housing is mental illness and addiction. And we need to address both of those. I think it's important that the state continue to support the mental illness piece of that. I believe that the state has done a woeful job of ensuring that we have enough beds at the state level for our state mental hospital. It's very full right now, and we need to also address our civil commitment rules. There's a reason that there are multiple hospitals in the state that are actually suing the state regarding mental illness, because they need to clear some of those bed spaces out to move people up into the state hospital.
Senator?
Craig, I'd agree that the state's been deficient in past years. There's really been a game change in the last 2 years with massive investments in mental health and housing, way more than before. I would love to take credit, but the fact is those were COVID federal dollars that helped us beef it up. I think that the issue, I really am glad that we are joining mental health and homelessness as we look at that. Otherwise, we're never going to make progress. And I just saw this morning, and I know the mayor signed on to this, 24 Oregon mayors saying that the state needs to spend more on homelessness along the line that we already have with Rogue Retreat, and brought them $1 million this last year for an urban campground. But it also says they want $123 million more for homelessness. That's great. Let's do it. Let's also remember we have a joint responsibility to figure out how to pay for that, because you can't both advocate for big tax cuts and get serious about this problem.
Our next question to you, Senator, is what is an issue facing state government that isn't on Oregonians' radar that should be? What steps would you take to address that issue?
It would take a while to come up with the very top one. One that comes to mind quickly, Craig, is campaign finance reform. We are one of 4 states still with no limits on campaign financing. And I believed when I ran, and I believe more now after 4 years in Salem, that the really large donations from any entities with an interest in how legislation comes out is what's stalling progress. We did, I was able to get Measure 107 on the ballot, constitutional change where we are now allowed for sure to limit campaign contributions, but we haven't come up with a formula. We're fighting internally about that. I really see that as kind of a linchpin. If we can get real progress on that and take the big money out of politics, you're going to see real progress on issues we've been stalled on before.
One thing that I don't see that is on the front burner for a lot of folks in Oregon is our water issues. We need to really ensure that we're addressing the water issues. The senator mentioned it a little bit earlier today, but routinely I hear it in the mayor's office concerns about our watershed, and we need to ensure that we are actively protecting our watershed. And I know that the senator has taken steps to address illegal water usages by the cartel grows, but we also need to ensure that we're actually managing our forest, because I've seen some studies where unmanaged forests are actually draining watersheds and groundwater. So we need to address our water issues.
Our last question, gun legislation to you, Randy. Obviously, it's a hot topic right now in every state as well as federally. What would you propose, if anything, regarding Oregon's current gun legislation?
Well, Oregon has one of the more stringent gun laws in the United States. And I think one of the most important things we need to do is ensure that we're actually enforcing our current laws and that we're actually holding criminals accountable. I'd love to see us increase our police officers' abilities to investigate gun laws and ensure that those laws are fairly investigated. I think it's truly important that we also address our mental health issues, because some of the most serious tragic events that we have all have a mental health nexus. And I'm a big proponent of school resource officers in our high schools. I think that there are boots on the ground that can actually intervene in some of these issues, and I'd also like to see that our schools have adequate mental health programs for their students.
On that last point, Craig, the Student Success Act we passed in 2019 really fortified mental health in the schools. But I think, the gun issue goes off track, in my view, when people start talking about it as entirely a gun availability problem or entirely a mental health problem. To me, it is clearly a mix when you compare us to any comparable country. It is the mix of the two. So I really want to dialogue more with people who will recognize it isn't all one thing, have some creative and flexible thinking around this. I think that we need to get stronger on the kinds of laws, background checks, red flag, that will keep really unbalanced people away from the most lethal weapons. And we have to really get serious about early intervention in schools and really finding ways to find and help these kids, especially the kids who've been responsible for the most horrific shootings. But can we please go to kind of a both and thinking on guns instead of just saying all mental health or all guns?
All right, we are going to come back and do our closing statements. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.